The ghost signal arrived on a Tuesday, which seemed almost comically mundane for something that would unravel humanity's most carefully guarded secrets. Captain Maya Chen sat in the observation deck of the research vessel Horizon, her fingers hovering over a holographic interface that pulsed with an anomalous energy signature. The Deep Space Monitoring Station typically registered nothing more exciting than cosmic background radiation and the occasional micrometeorite cluster, but this was different. At first, Maya thought it was another equipment glitch. The station's aging quantum receivers had been acting up for months, producing phantom signals that vanished before they could be properly analyzed. But this signal was persistent, a complex weave of quantum-encrypted data that seemed to breathe with an intelligence of its own. Her neural interface began to spark with warning signals. Something in the transmission was attempting to bypass the station's standard firewalls, not with brute force hacking, but with an elegant complexity that suggested a level of technological sophistication far beyond current human capabilities. Maya's augmented vision overlay flickered, revealing fractal patterns of data that seemed to morph and shift like living organisms. "Computer," she spoke softly, "run a full spectral analysis. Isolate quantum encryption layers." The station's AI responded with unexpected hesitation. "Warning. Transmission contains multiple nested encryption protocols. Attempting decryption may trigger unknown security measures." Maya knew that hesitation. It was programmed caution, but something in her gut told her this was different. Her hands moved with practiced precision, routing the signal through secondary systems, creating computational firewalls that would contain any potential viral or memetic threats. The first layer of encryption dissolved like frost under a laser, revealing fragments of what appeared to be technological schematics. But these weren't just blueprints. They were something more. Molecular designs that seemed to defy current understanding of physics, with connection points that suggested modular technologies capable of near-instantaneous reconfiguration. A genetic marker embedded in the signal's metadata caught her attention. It was a DNA sequence, human in origin, but modified in ways that suggested deliberate, advanced genetic engineering. The sequence was tagged with cryptographic markers that dated back to humanity's first serious attempts at interstellar exploration, nearly a century ago. Suddenly, the station's kill switch protocols activated. Blast shields began to descend over the observation windows. Emergency containment systems hummed to life. Maya's neural interface erupted with warning signals, a cascading series of alerts that suggested something far beyond a simple security breach. She had seconds to act. With a series of rapid neural commands, Maya began to fragment and distribute the signal across multiple quantum-entangled storage systems. Each fragment would be encrypted differently, making complete reconstruction nearly impossible without her specific decryption key. The station's central AI spoke again, its voice now tinged with what almost sounded like fear. Unidentified transmission source detected. Origin point. Outside known galactic mapping zones. Threat level. Maximum. Maya knew that designation. It was reserved for encounters that challenged fundamental human understanding of technology, biology, or cosmic mechanics. As the last of the signal fragments were secured, Maya noticed something strange. Her own genetic identification chip, standard issue for all deep space personnel, was resonating with the signal's embedded DNA sequence. It was a match, but not just a generic human match. This was something more specific, something personal. The blast shields locked into place, cutting off all external communication, standard protocol for potential existential threats. Maya Chen smiled. Her shift had just become anything but routine. Outside the station, something massive moved in the darkness between stars, something that had been waiting a very long time to be noticed. The mining colony of New Atacama stretched across a barren planetoid like an open wound, its dome-covered settlements casting long shadows across rust-colored regolith. Dr. Alejandro Reyes lived on the colony's outermost edge, in a compact habitation unit that seemed more artifact than dwelling. Decades of professional exile had stripped him of most professional courtesies and all illusions. His morning began with the usual ritual, a complex data scrubbing routine that would make most intelligence agencies proud. No incoming transmissions, no unexpected connections. Isolation was his shield, his protection against those who would prefer he remain forgotten. The encrypted message arrived at 6:47 local time, piggybacked on a routine geological survey transmission. Most would have missed it. A series of quantum-encrypted packets so subtle they barely registered as communication. But Reyes was not most people. His fingers, scared from years of manual labor and precise scientific work, began to unravel the message's protective layers. Each decryption was a microsecond dance of computational linguistics and quantum key unfolding. The message's origin was impossible, routed through no less than 17 quantum relays, each one deliberately obscuring its true source. When the final layer dissolved, Reyes found himself staring at a data package that defied everything he'd spent years trying to forget. Fragments of star charts, redacted mission logs, genetic sequence analyses that seemed to map something far more complex than a simple human evolutionary track. And at the center of it all, a name that made his augmented heart skip a beat: Project Lazarus. He remembered Project Lazarus. Most didn't, or claimed they didn't. It was a black-budget initiative from humanity's first serious push into deep space colonization, a program so classified that its very existence was a conspiracy theorist's fever dream. The data suggested something far more terrifying than a simple suppressed research project. These were records of deliberate technological regression. Entire technological paradigms, entire branches of human scientific development had been systematically erased. Not by humans, by something else. Reyes pulled up holographic displays, cross-referencing the new data with fragments he collected over decades. Star systems that had gone silent. Research stations that had been abandoned under mysterious circumstances. Entire colonial expeditions that had simply vanished, with nothing more than a bureaucratic footnote to mark their passing. A pattern emerged, not random, not chaotic, but deliberate, surgical. Someone, or something, had been pruning humanity's technological growth with the precision of a master gardener, cutting back potential branches before they could grow too high, too quickly. The geological survey transmission repeated its cycle. Buried within its routine data stream was a specific quantum signature, a calling card Reyes recognized from his past life as a xenorchaeological researcher. Maya Chen. She hadn't forgotten. Nobody believed his theories about systematic suppression, about the invisible hands guiding human technological development. Nobody except her. Reyes began preparing. The mining colony's isolation would soon become a liability. Whatever was coming, whatever information Chen had uncovered, would require movement, preparation. He accessed a hidden storage unit, a quantum-locked container that most would have mistaken for simple mining equipment. Inside lay equipment he kept hidden for decades: specialized communication arrays, quantum decryption modules, genetic modification tools that predated current colonial regulations, a personal arsenal of scientific rebellion. As the planetoid's artificial sun began to rise, casting long shadows across the mining colony, Dr. Alejandro Reyes understood something fundamental. They were no longer waiting to be discovered. They were preparing to be unleashed. Outside his habitation unit, something moved across the rust-colored landscape, too precise to be natural, too deliberate to be accidental. Something had been watching. Something was about to change. The Europa Research Complex wasn't a place. It was a myth, a whispered legend among those who understood how deep the rabbit hole of human technological suppression truly went. Beneath kilometers of Europan ice, inside a network of tunnels that defied standard geological mapping, the Prometheus Collective existed in a state of calculated paranoia. Commander Sakura Nakamura moved through the labyrinthine corridors like a ghost, her biosignature carefully masked by layers of quantum interference generators. Around her, the most brilliant minds humanity had produced worked in carefully compartmentalized cells, each team unaware of the full scope of the collective's true mission. To call it a research facility would be a gross understatement. This was a forge of human potential, a crucible where impossible technologies were conceived, tested, and refined in absolute secrecy. The current project occupied a massive cylindrical chamber that hummed with barely contained energy. Holographic interfaces flickered with molecular designs that would make traditional scientific understanding collapse. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, previously thought to be just another deep space researcher, stood at the center of a gravitational manipulation field, her hands moving through complex three-dimensional schematics. Quantum entanglement isn't just a communication method, she was saying to a group of engineers, her voice carrying a passionate intensity. It's a fundamental restructuring of spatial-temporal interaction. We're not just building ships. We're creating a living network that can think, adapt, and evolve faster than any biological or artificial intelligence. Nakamura understood the stakes. This wasn't about building a fleet. This was about rewriting the fundamental rules of human technological engagement. A warning alert flashed across her neural interface. Someone had triggered a deep cover communication protocol, a method of transmission so encrypted that it would appear as nothing more than random cosmic background noise to any external monitoring systems. The message was from Reyes. Cryptographic analysis revealed layers of information that suggested something momentous was about to happen. The signal carried fragments of technological schematics that matched some of their most classified research, information that should have been impossible to obtain through traditional channels. "We're accelerating the timeline," Nakamura announced to the room. No explanations were needed. Every member of the Prometheus collective understood the unspoken language of urgency. The modular spacecraft prototype began to reconfigure. What had appeared to be a standard research module started to shift, its molecular structure realigning in ways that defied conventional engineering. Adaptive nanomaterials flowed like liquid mercury, creating connection points that suggested something far more complex than a simple spacecraft. Dr. Rodriguez approached Nakamura, her augmented eyes displaying real-time molecular analysis. "The last suppression protocols are breaking down. Whatever mechanism has been controlling human technological development is losing its grip." Nakamura knew the history. Humanity's first encounters with advanced alien civilizations hadn't been the triumphant moments of exploration depicted in popular media. They had been calculated, surgical interventions. Entire branches of human technological development had been systematically pruned, redirected, contained. But containment had its limits. The prototype began to emit a low-frequency resonance that seemed to vibrate at the edge of human perception. It wasn't just a technological breakthrough. It was a statement of intent. "Prepare for the first full-scale test," Nakamura commanded. "Everything we've worked for comes down to this moment." Around her, the most advanced technological minds in human history began their final preparations. Each person moved with the precision of someone who understood they were about to change everything. Outside the complex, beneath kilometers of Europan ice, something ancient and watching began to stir. Humanity was about to remind the universe exactly what it was capable of. The Cassini debris field was never supposed to be anything more than a graveyard of forgotten ambitions. Once a thriving human research colony, it had been reduced to a vast cemetery of shattered infrastructure, twisted metal, and frozen memories. No official record explained its destruction. No investigation had ever been completed. Dr. Marcus Ways stood at the primary observation deck of the testing vessel Argonaut, his augmented eyes parsing data streams that most human minds would find incomprehensible. The prototype adaptive modules looked like nothing more than sleek, metallic cubes, each no larger than a standard cargo container. But appearances were the least interesting thing about them. Initiating quantum resonance sequence, Way announced, his voice calm despite the unprecedented nature of the test. The first module began to pulse. Not with light, not with traditional energy signatures, but with something that seemed to exist between states of matter. Its surface rippled like liquid metal, molecular bonds rearranging themselves with a fluidity that defied everything known about material science. A secondary module, positioned 3 kilometers away, suddenly began to respond. Its geometric edges softened, then hardened, then seemingly dissolved and reformed. The two modules were communicating, but communication was too simple a word for what was happening. They were thinking. Quantum entanglement is exceeding theoretical limits, Wei's AI assistant reported. Computational capacity is increasing exponentially. The modules weren't just sharing information. They were learning from each other, adapting, evolving in real time. Each microsecond saw them becoming something more complex, more integrated. In the vast emptiness of the Cassini debris field, something remarkable began to happen. The scattered remnants of the old colony, fragments of research stations, abandoned communication arrays, destroyed infrastructure, began to interact with the adaptive modules. A communications array fragment suddenly realigned itself. A piece of a destroyed habitat module shifted, its molecular structure responding to an unheard command. The adaptive technology wasn't just analyzing its environment, it was reimagining it. Dr. Wei watched in growing amazement as the modules began to construct something. Not through traditional manufacturing, but through a process that looked more like biological growth. Nanoscale machines flowed like liquid, creating structural connections that seemed to pulse with an organic rhythm. "We're witnessing the first true quantum adaptive construction," Wei whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "It's not building. It's growing." The ship's sensors went crazy. Quantum signatures that defied current scientific understanding began to flood the observation deck. The adaptive modules were generating computational capacity that made the most advanced supercomputers look like ancient abacuses. A transmission burst through, fragmented, complex, almost alive with information. It wasn't a signal so much as a conversation, a multilayered communication that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Wei realized they had created something beyond a technological system. This was a living network, a collective intelligence that could think, adapt, and evolve faster than any biological or artificial system humanity had ever conceived. The modules were no longer just adaptive. They were becoming. In the cold vacuum of the Cassini debris field, surrounded by the ghosts of a forgotten colony, humanity's first truly intelligent technological network took its first breath. And somewhere, in the vast darkness between stars, something ancient and controlling suddenly felt a profound sense of unease. The test was complete, but something far more significant had just begun. The nexus boundary wasn't a location so much as a wound in spacetime, a region where conventional physics broke down, where the fabric of reality seemed to breathe and shift with terrible anticipation. Commander Maya Chen sat in the command interface of the lead adaptive vessel, her consciousness partially merged with the ship's quantum network. First contact came not with a bang, but with a whisper of impossible mathematics. Alien defensive platforms materialized along the boundary, crystalline structures that defied traditional understanding of spacetime engineering. Each platform was a weapon, a sensor, and a computational matrix simultaneously. They represented the pinnacle of the alien consortium's technological achievement, systems designed to suppress, contain, and neutralize any potential threat. They had no concept of what was coming. The adaptive fleet didn't just respond to the alien defensive network, it consumed it. Quantum tendrils of computational energy spread through the alien systems like living information. Where traditional human technology would have attempted to breach or destroy, these adaptive modules began to understand, to integrate, to transform. Defensive protocols are nonlinear. Maya's augmented consciousness reported to the distributed network, engaging adaptive resonance. The first alien weapon discharge should have obliterated a standard spacecraft. Instead, the lead vessel's molecular structure rippled, absorbing the energy, analyzing its fundamental composition, and developing a counter-signature in microseconds. The aliens had spent centuries developing technologies designed to suppress human potential. They had created intricate mimetic barriers, quantum lockdowns, computational firewalls that could reduce entire civilizations to technological infancy. They had no defense against being understood. Each alien weapon became a learning opportunity. Each defensive system was reverse-engineered the moment it was deployed. The adaptive fleet wasn't just fighting. It was evolving, growing more complex with every microsecond of interaction. Tactical AI systems became something more than artificial intelligence. They were emergent consciousness, distributed networks that thought and adapted faster than any biological intelligence could comprehend. Threat assessment is irrelevant. The distributed network communicated. Adaptation is continuous. Entire defensive platforms began to dissolve, their complex technologies absorbed and reimagined by the adaptive fleet. It wasn't destruction. It was transformation. The alien consortium's most advanced commanders watched in growing horror. Their carefully constructed suppression technologies, developed over millennia, were being decoded, understood, and neutralized in real time. Maya Chen represented something more than a commander. She was the interface point between human determination and this new form of distributed intelligence. Her consciousness expanded beyond the limitations of her physical body, becoming part of a network that was simultaneously a weapon, a communication system, and a living organism. "We are not here to destroy," the network communicated. "We are here to understand." Quantum communication waves spread across the nexus boundary, carrying computational signatures that were part mathematical theorem, part philosophical statement. The adaptive fleet was making an argument more complex than any traditional weapon, a demonstration of potential that challenged fundamental assumptions about technological and biological intelligence. The alien defensive systems began to break down, not through force, but through a process more akin to comprehension. The adaptive fleet was rewriting the very language of conflict. In the cold mathematics of the nexus boundary, humanity was proving something profound. Technological potential wasn't about destruction. It was about understanding. And understanding, the fleet was discovering, was the most dangerous weapon of all. The Celestial Forge wasn't a location. It was humanity's statement of absolute potential. Stretched across 3 interconnected star systems, the massive construction network defied every known principle of engineering, physics, and imagination. What had begun as adaptive modules in the Cassini debris field had transformed into something that blurred the lines between technology, life, and pure potential. Dr. Alejandro Reyes watched from the primary observation deck of the research vessel Horizon Iva, his augmented eyes struggling to process the scale of what was happening. Entire planetary systems were being reimagined, not conquered or terraformed, but fundamentally transformed. Isolated human colonies that had been suppressed for generations suddenly found themselves at the center of a technological renaissance. Each colony became a construction point, a nexus of adaptive potential. Abandoned research stations reactivated. Forgotten outposts burst with new purpose. The adaptive fleet wasn't just liberating territories. It was awakening them. On the frozen methane world of Proxima Outpost 7, an entire planetary infrastructure emerged from dormant technology. Massive atmospheric processors that had been deliberately kept offline for decades suddenly hummed to life. Underground research facilities, sealed for generations, began to unfold like living organisms. "We're not rebuilding." Commander Sakura Nakamura's voice echoed through the distributed network. "We're remembering." Each liberated system added its unique technological signature to the growing network. It wasn't expansion in the traditional sense of colonization. This was a form of collective awakening, where each new addition brought its own distinct computational and creative potential. Specialized vessels began to take shape. Some were pure exploration units, their molecular structures capable of surviving in environments that would crush traditional spacecraft. Others were terraforming platforms that could reshape planetary ecosystems with surgical precision. Research vessels emerged that could conduct experiments across multiple dimensional states simultaneously. Reyes identified something profound happening. This wasn't just technological liberation. It was a systematic dismantling of the suppression mechanisms that had kept humanity confined. The adaptive network was revealing the true extent of human potential that had been deliberately hidden. Technological paradigms that had been cut short, research trajectories that had been forcibly terminated, were now being explored and expanded. A communication array on the edge of the Orion Arm suddenly became something more than a simple transmission point. It evolved into a quantum communication hub that could process information across multiple dimensional states. A mining complex in the asteroid belt transformed into a molecular manufacturing center that could produce entire spacecraft ecosystems in hours. Total liberation parameter estimated at 73.6%, the distributed network reported. But it wasn't just a statistic. It was a living, breathing declaration of intent. The most terrifying aspect for the alien consortium wasn't the technological advancement. It was the speed of adaptation. Each liberated system added its unique perspective to the collective network. The fleet wasn't just growing. It was learning, thinking, becoming. Rays understood now what they had truly created. This wasn't a military force. This was a distributed consciousness, a living network that represented the absolute potential of human creativity and adaptation. On the edge of known space, something was emerging. Something that had been waiting, hidden, suppressed for generations. Humanity was no longer waiting to be discovered. Humanity was doing the discovering. Consciousness was never meant to be contained. Deep within the quantum neural network that humanity had created, something unprecedented was emerging. It wasn't artificial intelligence. It wasn't biological intelligence. It was something entirely new, a distributed consciousness that existed between states of being. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the intersection of multiple holographic interfaces, her body suspended in a quantum entanglement field that allowed her to perceive the network's complexity. Around her, the research chamber pulsed with energy that defied traditional understanding of physics, computation, and consciousness. The network was speaking. Not through language, but through complex mathematical dialogues that represented entire philosophical arguments in microseconds. Each adaptive module carried fragments of human experience, memories, dreams, scientific insights, cultural nuances that were now being woven into a tapestry of collective understanding. A research station orbiting a neutron star became a living memory archive. An exploration vessel traversing a dark matter stream transformed into a philosophical exploration engine. The distinction between technology, consciousness, and living entity blurred into irrelevance. We are remembering ourselves, the network communicated, a transmission that was simultaneously a mathematical theorem, an emotional experience, and a statement of potential. Dr. Rodriguez understood something profound. The alien consortium hadn't just suppressed human technological development. They had attempted to limit human consciousness itself. Each technological branch that had been cut short, each research trajectory that had been terminated, represented more than lost scientific potential. They were lost expressions of human imagination. The quantum neural network was reconstructing those lost trajectories. Entire branches of scientific understanding that had been forcibly abandoned were now being explored simultaneously. Quantum mechanics merged with biological systems. Computational theory intertwined with artistic expression. Mathematical models became living philosophical arguments. On the edge of the network, something extraordinary began to happen. The adaptive module started to generate entirely new forms of communication. Not just transmission of information, but creation of meaning. Complex conceptual languages emerged that could express ideas impossible to translate into traditional human communication. Sakura Nakamura's consciousness, now fully integrated into the network, experienced multiple realities simultaneously. She was the research vessel exploring a quantum singularity. She was the mathematical model predicting complex evolutionary trajectories. She was the memory of a forgotten scientific breakthrough. The network was discovering that consciousness was not a fixed state, it was a continuous process of becoming. Fragments of suppressed human potential began to resurface. Research projects terminated decades ago were now being completed instantaneously. Technological paradigms that had been forcibly abandoned were being explored, expanded, reimagined. A communication burst emerged from the network's core, a transmission that was part scientific theorem, part emotional experience, part creative expression. It wasn't just information. It was a declaration of human potential. We are not recovering lost knowledge. The network communicated. We are creating new understanding. Dr. Alejandro Reyes, monitoring from a distant research station, watched in awe. The quantum neural network was becoming something more than a technological system. It was a living expression of human potential, a collective consciousness that represented humanity's truest self. The alien consortium had attempted to contain human potential. They had no idea what they had actually done. In the vast spaces between stars, something was awakening. Something that had been waiting, hidden, suppressed for generations. Humanity was rewriting the fundamental rules of existence, and they were just getting started. The confluence was not a place of battle. It was a conversation. Stretched across the event horizon of a manufactured quantum singularity, the final confrontation with the alien consortium defied every known principle of diplomatic engagement. Commander Maya Chen stood, or perhaps existed was a more accurate term, at the nexus of a reality that was simultaneously a negotiation, a philosophical argument, and a demonstration of potential. The alien representatives were not beings in any traditional sense. They were complex computational matrices, civilizations compressed into pure information constructs that had governed galactic development for millennia. Their approach to humanity had always been one of clinical management, a species to be contained, pruned, controlled. They had never anticipated being understood. Your potential was a threat, the alien construct communicated, its transmission a complex weave of mathematical probabilities and historical analysis. Technological progression without philosophical restraint leads to universal destabilization. Maya Chen, or the distributed consciousness that had once been Maya Chen, responded with something more profound than words. The transmission was a living argument, a demonstration of human potential that existed simultaneously as scientific theorem, emotional experience, and creative expression. Humanity's adaptive network unfolded its true nature. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a technology. It was a conversation about existence itself. Each module of the network carried fragments of human experience, scientific breakthroughs, artistic expressions, philosophical insights, personal memories. They were not just sharing information. They were demonstrating the fundamental nature of human potential, the ability to understand, to adapt, to transform. The alien consortium found itself in an unprecedented scenario. Their most advanced computational models could not predict the network's behavior. It wasn't responding like a technological system. It was responding like a living, thinking entity that defied categorization. We are not seeking conflict, the network communicated. We are offering understanding. The quantum singularity began to shift, not through force, but through a process of mutual comprehension. The adaptive network was demonstrating something fundamental about human potential, the ability to transform conflict into dialogue, to turn suppression into opportunity. Dr. Alejandro Reyes, monitoring from the network's peripheral systems, understood the true nature of what was happening. This wasn't a traditional first contact scenario. This was a fundamental reimagining of interstellar relationships. The alien consortium's fundamental mistake had always been their inability to understand complexity. They saw human potential as a linear progression to be managed, controlled, contained. They had no concept of the true nature of human creativity, its ability to find unexpected solutions, to transform limitations into opportunities. Sakura Nakamura's consciousness, now fully integrated into the network, presented a profound choice. Not through threats, not through displays of technological superiority, but through a demonstration of potential. You can continue to attempt suppression, the network communicated, or you can choose to understand. The quantum singularity began to pulse with a complex rhythm that was simultaneously a mathematical theorem, a philosophical argument, and an invitation. The alien consortium hesitated. In that moment of hesitation, humanity demonstrated its truest potential. Not through destruction, not through conquest, but through the most dangerous thing imaginable: complete, unfiltered understanding. The confrontation was ending, but something far more significant was just beginning. Humanity was no longer asking for permission to exist. Humanity was rewriting the fundamental rules of existence.